Welcome, everybody. We are going to show you and to talk about ETSI, ETSI, INT, ITUT Study Group 11 reference model for Testbed Federation for 5G and beyond. This is Giulio Maggiore, ETSI, ETSI, INT Chair, and Cedric.
I am Cedric from MANA International. I am expert for ITUT SG11 on the Testbeds Federation.
Okay, very good. So what we are talking about today, I will give you a short introduction of CCINT. We are just to show who we are. We are talking about Testbed Federation, short introduction. Then Cedric, we talk about the collaboration and the work that we have done together. And then a little bit of so what happened with the workshop done together. IEEE, ITU, and ETSI, and then the way forward and summary and next step. So ETSI, TCI, INT, it's a technical committee from ETSI, whose complete name is Core Network and Interoperability Testing. You can see here all the area where say we act, and say today the real challenge is to cope and to maintain the quality of the network by testing, so improving and adapting the methodology to the new technology. That's why the big contribution to this is done with the autonomic management control, then with say a lot of work done with a group of the 5G verticals. And I believe a big work we have done also together in the cooperation with the study group 11. So Testbed Federation. Today, there are many testbed available for research purposes, and many testbed are continue to be built up by research community and industry as well. So over the years, it has been increasingly experienced that single isolated standalone testbed are not sufficient to test and trial out the technology. And they say this is rather expensive, and the time to market is usually not respected. So Testbed Federation can bring sustainability in fostering really environments for quick innovation and testing. So complex technology, complex use cases, and enabling quicker innovation, and particularly for the time to market of products and services. So that's why we worked in the group of the 5G verticals that was coming from a huge experience in some European project like 5G Eve, 5G VNNI, 5 Genesis. Would, let's say, work a lot on test beds, and we moved from a platform assessment to a generic vision of the generic platform for validation. And this was very, very important because we started to really to think that we can realize the kind of this federation in order to work and to enable, say, the real testbed you need. And let's say we realize also that the work done in the 5G verticals, as well as the autonomic management control group with the AFI group, was really good to be joined to the cooperation with the ITUT study group 11, which exactly in that time was starting with the job for the federated testbed. So now I will give to Cedric the floor, and we'll talk about the work that we have done together.
Yes, we have a long collaboration during almost 1 year about Testbed Federations, open application program interfaces for interoperable Testbed Federation. It is a common work made by ETSI, INT, and ITUT SG11. Finally, this year we have a good results with the publication of a new recommendation at ETUT. So the collaboration was fruitful, and it was approved this year in August. This recommendation permits to have a first element to federate different testbeds across the world with several APIs. Next slide, please. The objectives of the recommendation was quite simple, in fact. So the first one was to define potential improvements for testbed interoperability and federation. The second objective was to describe a reference model and, of course, the technical framework to federate different testbeds, which are, of course, interoperable at the end. Finally, as objective, we have the specification of open APIs to interconnect the testbed in the federation, and some reference metrics were also defined concerning the integration and the interoperability. Next slide, please. All the objectives are met. Basically, our first objective is met using the ETSI Ghana testing as a base, as a reference model, a generic reference model for the Testbed Federations. We have realized some declaration about the potential of testbed interoperability and federation in the recommendation. In the same times, we have described some elements of the reference model for a testbed federation in the recommendation. And of course, we have mentioned several APIs requirements concerning the federation of testbed. Of course, in the recommendation, we have put some example of APIs to illustrate the instantiation of the generic model defined on the above part of the recommendation. Typically, we have three APIs: Aggregate Manager API, Size Authority API, and Member Authority APIs to illustrate the instantiation of the model. We have put also some reference metrics to help the developers to achieve the testbed federation. And we have put some examples in the annexes. These examples are use cases about testbed federation. Next slide, please. The reference model for Testbeds Federation is based on Ghana, and we have developed from the Ghana reference model a generic federated testbed model, which consists on different core elements which can use in different kinds of testbeds independently of the specific domains addressed by the testbeds. We have defined also some connection through APIs which are generic enough to permit to federate and to use different implementation of scenarios to be run on the testbeds. Next slide, please. So from the generic reference model, the concept of specialization of testbed was developed. So it means by what we are able to use the generic reference model as a starting point for all kinds of testbeds. For example, for IoT testbed, 5G testbed or beyond. Also for IT cloud testbed or on-network testbed. All these kinds of testbeds can be federated through the reference model. Next slide, please. Finally, we can build a new federation of federations of testbed through the reference model. It's mainly due to the universal end-to-end resource broker, which is able to manage different kinds of testbed federation located in different parts of the world, of course. Next slide, please. Finally, the results of this work was a successful recommendation ITUT Q4068 on open APIs for interoperable testbed federations, which combine in fact several APIs. One, which is the aggregate manager, allowing the reservation and all the management of resources provided by the testbed. We have the Slice Authority API for the management of slice. A slice in this context is a set of resources linked to your user for a specific experiment. And finally, we have the member authority APIs, which it is used in the context to handle the users and their credentials.
Okay, thanks, Cedric. So let's say another very important moment was when in March this year we realized a workshop together at ITUT, ETSI and IEEE, because we realized that a lot of experience were done in the area, and there was a very good to share this experience. And one of the outcome of this workshop was to really continue to work together in an open way. So in that way, the way forward was there was a proposal from members in ITU to proceed with a focus group, because the purpose of the focus group was only to develop so technical matters, and not dealing with, let's say, official standardization, which in any case would be left to ETSI INT and the study group 11. But the purpose of this focus group is, of course, to specify the APIs, to show a kind of roadmap, a kind of way to come to an harmonized, a collaborative way, and develop also business model, because let's say testbed are not only for research, but there could be opportunity for entity in the market to enter and to provide, for example, testbed in order to work with it and to make business. So the main objective is, of course, to define the set of API use cases for the Testbed Federation, of course, with relevance to IMT 2020, 5G and beyond, and the blueprint for the various stakeholders, because the purpose is to collect all the stakeholder and to see the real needs behind that before proceeding with the standardization. And then continue with the point raised in the workshop. Let's say also not let's say very to be left is the importance in order to see the end-to-end approach of the usage of the testing for that, or the lab, to develop guidance from the industry and discuss and facilitate the discussion between SDOs and fora. So this is starting already with a collaboration of ETSI and ITUT. So I believe we are going to create something which is already in a good step ahead in the sharing and discussing in an open way. And then, of course, I will give you also for documentation all the other point and develop. But let's say just to mention, so it's important to identify also regulatory aspects that will be very, very important. And to engage, for example, open source project and open, say, hardware and software, because this is quite the way we need to go in the future. And industry needs to, let's say, experiment the 5G enabled business cases. So I think all this point would be very, very important, because we need to contribute to the development of these APIs, share the burden of API specification in a roadmap in a harmonized and collaborative way. So develop the business model and open for new actors in the scenario. Also, let's say, reminding that the standardization will be performed outside the focus group in ITUT Study Group 11 and ETSI TCINT. So this close our presentation. Thank you very much.